5.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Space Shuttle Challenger and crew today completed most of their many firsts in space, but couldn't meet their last first on landing, the first ever touchdown at Florida home port. Instead, Terry Drinkwater reports it was a happy landing in California's patch of blue because of Florida's patch of fog.
Shuttle was supposed to land today for the first time on this new runway at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but the fog was just too thick.
Looks like we're a no-go for KSC. We will be going into Edwards on the following orbit.
NASA doesn't have enough confidence in Shuttle's computers to have allowed the automatic pilot to fly the spacecraft to a touchdown in such poor visibility. The weather at Edwards was ideal, but only a few space fans chanced the odds to come to the desert. Landing here, rather than in Florida, means the shuttle must be piggybacked on a 747 to the launch pad, and that will delay the next flight by as much as 8 days. But still, NASA called this the best of all the 7 shuttle missions. There were many firsts, an American woman in space. Together, the crew retrieved a satellite from space for the first time and put 2 other satellites into orbit. The president had planned to greet the 5 astronauts in Florida, but he ended up calling California.
Well, Dr. Let me just remind you that when we had lunch here at the White House before your flight,
that somebody said that sometimes the best man for a job was a woman.
You were there because you were the best person for the job.
Sally Ride said she was moved and grateful, and later she talked to the small crowd.
The thing that I'll remember most about that flight is that it was fun, and in fact, I'm sure it's the most fun I'll ever have in my life.
Sally Ride taught me that the term equal opportunity does not apply to dividing up the peanuts and butter cookies.
There were no stomach aches from too many cookies. Indeed, the doctor, the first MD in space, had no patience. None of the astronauts apparently developed the space motion sickness which had plagued so many other crews. Florida's fog and California's sunshine will be footnotes of this mission. What history will record is that this space trek was the first for an American woman. She was welcomed home to Houston tonight by her waiting husband, who's also an astronaut. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Edwards Air Force Base, California.
As resort owners lamented lost summertime trade today, broiling water deliberately released from 3 Colorado River dams threatened more vacation homes and businesses. That water is now surging over 3 western states and on down across the Mexican border. It's expected to rise 5 or 6 feet by Wednesday in Yuma, Arizona and Baja, California. And floodwaters from a broken dam on Utah's Sevier River peaked today. But Ned Potter reports that troubled tide may leave cropland high and dry.
Deseret, Utah is where the floodwaters hurt hardest. They spilled over the edge of the broken dam and spread for miles.
We need everybody but authorized personnel to leave this area.
Some 400 people had to be moved as the waters advanced overnight. By morning, Deseret was knee-deep, and there were few ways for people to get in and find out what they'd lost.
It's kind of an eerie feeling down in there. It's, you know, watch water run in front door and out the back of houses, you know.
Evan and Dixie Skeen waded into their place. They had a flock of sheep. They rescued a 1-week-old lamb.
He was in the manger. It's the only reason they got him left. He was up in the manger and he just about had it.
There was other damage, too, to U.S. Route 6 and to the only railroad line from Salt Lake City to Los Angeles.
The irony, of course, is that the dam system was for irrigation. The origin of the name Deseret is that this is the land that the Mormons made bloom from the desert.
Today they worried that the crops will drown and then eventually be left parched.
Now that we've lost our irrigating system, we probably won't be able to irrigate the farms the rest of the summer.
And Governor Scott Matheson, flying in to look at the area, said Utah's agricultural damage, already $100 million for the year, might now be tripled.
I think you manage things, Mother Nature has taken over for us.
By this afternoon, Mother Nature was giving back. The water level was steadily dropping. Now we'll go back home, said one farmer, and clean up the best we can. Ned Potter, CBS News, Deseret, Utah.
Ooh, stir up chicken before lamb, add a touch of Kiko Man. Flip an omelet in the pan, add a touch of Kiko Man. Make a salad better than, add a touch of Kiko Man. Difference is intriguing, the taste is unbelieving.
The Kiko Man touch makes so many dishes taste better. The naturally brewed soy sauce, Kiko Man.
Make it special, make it grand, add a touch of Kiko Man.
And I don't mind going to work because I know that the paint I'm using will make the day easier.
Benjamin Moore paint. The more you use it, the better you like it.
I came from a long line of painters. My grandfather was a painter. My dad was a painter. We used all different types of paint, and I've never seen anything work as well as Benjamin Moore is. It just sort of flows right on, and it stays where it's put.
Make painting easier. Talk to an expert. Your Benjamin Moore dealer.
Boy, I like this paint. I like this paint.
A century-old ban on contraceptive ads was struck down today by the Supreme Court, and Fred Graham reports so was one of President Reagan's earliest tries at deregulation, cancellation of automatic passenger safety system requirements for new cars.
Experts say 9,000 lives would be saved each year if airbags were installed in all cars, or if cars were outfitted with automatic seat belts which fold around passengers when they get in the front seat. So Joan Claybrook, President Carter's highway safety chief, ordered that by 1984 all new cars have one or the other. But the automobile manufacturers complain that airbags are too expensive and that people would disconnect the seat belts. The Reagan administration canceled the safety requirement. Today, a unanimous Supreme Court called the cancellation arbitrary and capricious and therefore illegal. Justice Byron White said the safety devices will be required unless the Department of Transportation comes up with sound reasons for not having them. There are indications that the department's new secretary, Elizabeth Dole, may decide to give up the fight and set a timetable for mandatory passive restraints.
We think that there's no reason why a substantial number of cars shouldn't be equipped with automatic seat belts by September of 1984, and that there's full-scale compliance with passive restraints by September of 1985.
We really ought to try it out and let the American consumer be the judge of whether or not this is the form of safety device that he'd like to have in his cars.
Today, the Supreme Court also turned its attention to an anti-vice crusader of an earlier era, Anthony Comstock, who persuaded Congress a century ago to outlaw a wide range of sexy books, pictures, and advertisements, including advertisements for contraceptives. Over the years, the court had struck down all the provisions of the Comstock law except one, making it illegal to send contraceptive advertisements through the mails. Today, the court said such mailings are legal, thus putting to rest the last remnant of the law that was the life's work of America's most famous censor of the Victorian era. Fred Graham, CBS News at the Supreme Court.
In Los Angeles today, Stephen Lee Arrington, a co-defendant in John Z. DeLorean's cocaine trafficking case, unexpectedly pleaded guilty to conspiracy and cocaine distribution. But Arrington did not agree to be a witness at DeLorean's trial, which is set to begin October 4th. The other DeLorean co-defendant, William M. Hetrick, pleaded guilty earlier this month and agreed to testify against DeLorean and Arrington. DeLorean's attorney said Arrington's plea today would have no effect on DeLorean's case. In another case, this should have been a great day for 5 movie makers, but instead, James McManus reports it was a day of reckoning.
Today, they were in front of the cameras. Movie director John Landis and 4 behind-the-scenes executives and technicians entered a Los Angeles courtroom.
Each of you did unlawfully and feloniously kill a human being without malice.
Landis and the men who helped him film the movie Twilight Zone pleaded not guilty to charges of involuntary manslaughter in the deaths last July of actor Vic Morrow and 2 children. Helicopter pilot Dorsey Wingo, one of those indicted, now says he was ordered to fly low over the huts of a movie set, Vietnam Village. Explosions were set off below on cue. The 800-degree fireball and debris mushroomed upward, engulfing the helicopter's tail section, shattering the rotor. The helicopter crashed down on actor Morrow and the 2 children. Los Angeles District Attorney Robert Filibosian said the grand jury determined that Director Landis was in overall charge.
Because of his direction, we're alleging that the stunts were conducted in a reckless manner.
The accident was an overwhelming tragedy for many people. It's had a profound impact on our lives, and I know in my head and I know in my heart that we did not cause this accident.
If convicted on all counts, John Landis faces a maximum of 6 years in state prison. Ironically, while the director was in court, theaters across the nation were preparing for today's first showing of Twilight Zone, a movie he helped direct. James McManus, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Harry, darling. Sometimes when Harry's been out to sea for too long, I like to shake him up a little with a banana berry blast.
Make it Jell-O, gelatin, create a sensation.
It's easy to make with Jell-O brand gelatin. I add fruit, Cool Whip topping, and more fruit on top.
Terrific. I've been away for too long.
Make it Jell-O, gelatin, create a sensation. J-E-L-L-O.
Now at Dodge and Chrysler Plymouth, low financing and high rebates. Choose 8.7% or a $400 rebate on Dodge Omni, Plymouth Horizon, $400 on import cars and trucks. You get big cash rebates only on these cars and trucks. $300 on K cars, $500 on Dodge pickups, $750 on Ram Charger. And every new Chrysler-built car comes with 5-year, 50,000-mile protection. Low financing, high rebates, long protection. Only from Chrysler.
For Lech Wałęsa, this was the day after a very momentous day, and to unwind, he went fishing. The Solidarity Union leader found a spot on a lake near his Gdansk home. He refused to give details of his audience with Pope John Paul yesterday, but he did say it gave him inner peace, and he was more optimistic than before. Syria sent PLO leader Yasser Arafat packing today. It gave him 6 hours to clear out and stay out. 5 hours and 50 minutes later, Arafat was on his way, flying to Tunis. Syria reportedly acted as it did because of Arafat's charges that Syria is aiding a revolt against him. He accused Syria of sanctioning an ambush near Damascus last night in which 13 of Arafat's men were said to have been killed or wounded. Alan Pizzi is in Damascus.
The incident was the latest in a series that began shortly after the revolt broke out last month. A doctor said more than a dozen wounded were brought in from Lebanon over the past 2 days, and included those who fought both for and against Arafat. The rebels took over positions held by Arafat's men near the Bekaa Valley town of Shtura a few days ago. Arafat claimed the Syrians, who separated the two sides, used tanks against his men, a charge the Syrians and rebels denied. Recently, Arafat has been spending most of his time in Lebanon rallying his men. He has now been cut off from them. The only way he could return to Lebanon is through Syria, or by sea to the port of Tripoli, where the PLO still has bases. But Israeli gunboats control the sea, and Syrian troops surround the city. All the main roads are held by Syrians or anti-Arafat Palestinians. There are thousands of Palestinian refugees in Syria, and diplomatic observers here believe the Syrians want to weaken Arafat so they can exert more control over the PLO. The anti-Arafat forces want the same as the Syrian government wants, a hard line against Israel and rejection of the Reagan peace plan. That would undermine Arafat's position. Until today, almost no one, even in rebel ranks, was suggesting that Arafat should be removed totally as PLO leader. But the expulsion from his only access to the front line puts Arafat's future and that of the so-called moderate wing of the PLO in serious doubt. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Damascus.
On a tennis court at Wimbledon, England, a dream died today. Chris Everett Lloyd was defeated, losing to another American, Kathy Jordan, in a shocking upset. It dashed Everett Lloyd's hopes of a Grand Slam, of adding the English championship to the championships she already holds this season in this country, France, and Australia.
This is a match. This is Matchlight Charcoal. Something amazing is about to happen. The match will light the matchlight without adding lighter fluid. Matchlight lights faster and easier than regular charcoal, and
you don't need lighter fluid.
Matchlight. Now, all you need is Matchlight and a match. You don't need a single drop of lighter fluid, ever.
Olympic Stain. We've got the inside on outside protection. Inside every can of Olympic Stain with weather screen are specially treated oils and additives that actually repel water and preserve wood. Inside every can is the experience of over half a century. That's why Olympic protects the outside of more homes than any other stain. Olympic Stain. We've got the inside on outside protection.
Pentagon correspondent David Martin reports tonight that a Soviet underwater listening device was found near the site of the Navy's new Trident submarine base at Bangor, Washington. Quoting Pentagon officials, Martin says the device was washed ashore last September and the electronic circuits in it were identical to those made in the United States. President Reagan today denied knowing how his campaign people ever got a hold of Jimmy Carter's own briefing book before they debated each other for Election 80. And in any case, President Reagan says the whole issue doesn't amount to much. That was news to some Democrats who are treating the briefing book caper more like DebateGate. Leslie Stahl has more on this not-so-great debate.
The Justice Department has begun looking into the case of the purloined briefing book, reviewing charges that in 1980 someone filched, that is, stole, Jimmy Carter's presidential debate briefing materials and handed them to the Reagan campaign.
There you go again.
Justice Department sources say they have not been able to determine whether any laws were broken, but became interested in the case yesterday when 4 Reagan campaign officials sent letters to a congressional subcommittee, all saying they had no idea where the briefing book came from. Chief of Staff James Baker said he got it from CIA Director William Casey, but Casey said, "I have no recollection."
I think there's much ado about nothing. The letters are going up there in explanation. I myself would like to get at the bottom of it. I had no knowledge of any such thing, and frankly, I don't think there ever was a briefing book as such.
Carter people charge the materials were stolen out of the White House, a violation of law. But Reagan officials say it was nothing more than usual campaign practice, the same as leaking documents to reporters. Still, a congressional subcommittee is investigating, and officials here are praying this does not turn into briefing gate. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
To consumers, it might look like a lot of wrong numbers, but in Austin, Texas today, Southwestern Bell asked for a record $1.7 billion rate increase. That's the largest in the nation since AT&T managed to settle a Justice Department antitrust suit by agreeing to give up 22 Bell system companies. If approved by the Texas State Public Utility Commission, this proposed rate schedule reportedly would triple the average basic monthly telephone bill for most of the company's 4.5 million Texas customers. The company said the rate increase was needed to offset increased labor and other costs. Well, confession may be good for the soul, but when the confession is on videotape, Meredith Vieira reports, it's almost always good for a conviction. Something critics say may not be so good when you look at the issue close up.
Nobody hit him or nobody shot him. I don't know how he got hurt.
Cops and criminals do battle in St. Louis every day, but it is more than conventional warfare. Because in this city, one of the strongest weapons used to fight crime is a television camera.
I considered possibly just sniping them off. I figured that would be easy enough. But I thought, no, I would get caught.
Steve Ferguson is confessing to murder, telling detectives how he built a bomb that blew up 2 people.
The statement is made voluntarily with no threats, no promises.
Yeah, no threats, no promises, okay. And I gave it voluntarily.
The St. Louis Police Department has been inviting suspected criminals to its TV studio since 1970. It's not much of a studio by Hollywood standards with its old black and white camera, but law enforcement considers the show produced here the longest-running hit in the city, because almost everyone who's agreed to appear before the camera has ended up behind bars.
It's the single most effective piece of evidence that we could put before a jury.
Because, says Prosecutor George Peach,
they get to see exactly who they're dealing with and get to hear out of his own mouth how the crime was committed.
But Public Defender Joe Downey is concerned that suspects aren't videotaped until hours after an arrest. Enough time, he says, for police to get the confession just right.
And so by the time the person goes on camera, it's almost a rehearsed thing with the aid of the police.
Some wonder why any suspect would agree to waive his rights and go on camera, but many of them do, and not just in St. Louis. The Bronx DA says he's videotaped 3,000 confessions since 1975 and never lost a case.
And I've learned one thing. Everybody's a big ham. He not only tells you what you ask him, he tells you a heck of a lot more. He tells you his life history.
And some, like Ferguson, the man with the bomb, even seemed to brag a bit.
How much did it cost to put the whole device together? Can you recall?
Okay, basically it was made, like I like to think it was made under budget, which a lot of things aren't nowadays.
Ferguson's taped confession got him 150 years in prison, the longest non-parolable sentence in Missouri history. And that's incentive enough, police say, to keep their cameras rolling. Meredith Vieira, CBS News, St. Louis.
The trustees of the Social Security system today predicted an upbeat future for the overall solvency of the system's retirement and disability funds, but they also sounded some warning drums. Medicare, they said, is in danger of bankruptcy by early 1988. Also, they warned that Social Security's old age and survivors' benefits could run into short-term trouble again if there's any severe economic downturn over the next 4 years. He served 7 terms in Congress, 3 years as Republican National Chairman. But William E. Miller of New York is best remembered by many as the man they often forget was Barry Goldwater's running mate in 1964's presidential election. William E. Miller died today at the age of 69.
I've got one daughter in college and one getting married. And the last thing I need right now is to buy a new car. So every now and then I take the old Datsun down to Midas. Over the years I've been to Midas for struts, brakes, a muffler, and I've always gotten a good deal. Oh, I'll treat myself to a new car one day. But right now I've got other things I'd rather spend my money on.
Trust the Midas touch.
It's that time again. Time for the Kmart Colorful White Sale. You'll find big once-a-year savings on almost every item in the department.
Thirsty terry cloth towels, soft, colorful knitting yarns, warm quilts and comforters, dish and washcloths in a bouquet of colors, plush area rugs, and much, much more.
Check your newspaper for other fabulous bargains during the big Kmart White Sale.
At Kmart.
Kmart, we've got it, and we've got it good.
Warning, pollen can trigger bronchial asthma attacks. Be prepared with Primatene Mist. Primatene, the fastest type relief known for occasional attacks. Restores free breathing in as fast as 15 seconds. Or, to keep breathing freely for hours, Primatene tablets. In the lungs, Primatene opens clogged breathing tubes, relaxes bronchial spasms, restores free breathing. Primatene Mist, the fastest type relief known. Primatene tablets contains the asthma reliever doctors recommend most.
In Italy tonight, this was election eve, the last chance to campaign for the country's 9th post-war parliament. Voting takes place Sunday and Monday. Tomorrow is a day for voters to reflect, which in a way is what Richard Roth does for us now on the nature of Italy's quirky, unusual politics.
Con le controparti patronali sulle questioni del costo del lavoro e il rinnovo dei contratti.
There are times when Italy looks like a comic opera of a country where nothing works, no one cares, and the state of the state is perpetual chaos. The images of a people who love their flag but scorn their leaders. An erratic and fickle group who've had 43 governments in the past 38 years. An unstable place where on the average power changes hands every 10 months. But many Italians will tell you the image is wrong.
Contrary to what appears, Italy suffers from an excess of stability because the same leadership group, contrary to other nations, both in Western Europe, in America, and in Eastern Europe, Italy has been ruled by the same political group, basically, for the past 37 years.
Italy's political establishment is almost a dynasty, frequently reshuffled, but just a single deck of cards. Pick anyone. Prime Minister Fanfani led 5 Italian governments beginning in the 1950s. Foreign Minister, once Prime Minister Colombo, also a Justice Minister, Finance, Agriculture, and more. Take another, Prime Minister 5 times Giulio Andreotti, in between Minister of Defense, Interior, Finance, and Industry.
Certificato plurimo.
It's no wonder Italians get bored with government. They complain it's an eternal bureaucracy of unchanging faces, confused, inefficient, and often corrupt. Italians say this country survives not because of the government, but in spite of it. It's an article of faith here that personal ingenuity and a little style are the main ingredients of Italy's success. But style in Italy can disguise a lot. From the success of the Guccis, Cuccis, and Fioruccis, you wouldn't know there's a recession on, that the lira is weak, or that inflation is at 16%. The economy may be bad, but Italians still dine out at restaurants more than anyone on the continent. They own more vacation homes, and it often seems that even when Italian workers are not on vacation, they're still off the job. It's rare when there's not a labor strike. Big industry isn't growing. At best, most large companies are simply holding their own. When Italy works, it's almost a secret, because so much of the work is hidden in small jobs or spare jobs the government doesn't know about. Or in basements and garages like these outside Florence, where an almost invisible economy is booming. Small, flexible manufacturing companies, experts say, which are defying economic trends and flourishing. Leopoldo Cantini's business is too small to be counted in most official statistics. He says he earns less than $100 a day weaving textiles for Italy's fashion houses, which also buy the scarves and hats his mother knits by hand. It's estimated there are 15,000 families like this one, a whole industry that rarely gets measured and only barely gets taxed. The country may work in spite of the government, but in parts of Italy, a third of the workers are children who should be in school. Some Italians feel the government's been too weak, too long.
I think most Italians are aware of the necessity for a fundamental change. I think the politicians are also aware. If they go on this way, it would be almost impossible to prevent final collapse.
Italy's never been prone to radical change and has long had a way of confounding predictions. The Italian people are so accustomed to hearing their country has problems, they're always busy preparing for the worst.
Italians think catastrophe is just around the corner, and if there is no earthquake today, why, it's a wonderful day.
Richard Roth, CBS News, Rome.
Dan Rather reporting from New York. Ciao, which is Italian for good night. I don't know what the Italian is for have a good weekend.
Start out in a bright new way.
It's new.
Shredded wheat, toasted wheat and raisins.
Whole wheat and raisins grown in the sun. No added sugar or salt. This is the only one.
Start out in a bright new way. Shredded wheat, toasted wheat and raisins.
Raisins with smaller, lighter shredded wheat. No added sugar or salt. It's just naturally sweet.
Start out in a bright new way.
The only raisin cereal with no added sugar or salt.
Nabisco.
It's a great day. Well, he's not the father of the bride. I am. He's my Aetna agent. I met him when my Susie was her size, and my business wasn't much bigger. From day one, he's worried as much about my business as I have. Do I have enough insurance? Or too much insurance? Do I have the right insurance? And thanks to him, I'm free to worry about other things. Like how I'm going to pay for all this.
Call your Aetna agent.
Aetna, I'm glad I met you.
17 hours. That's how long it took us to paint this house with the brush. Then we painted it in just 6.5 hours with the Wagner Power Painter. This wicker chair took over an hour, but less than 5 minutes with a Wagner Power Painter. A shutter that took 20 minutes, a Power Painter finished in only 3. It's a tool so versatile, it has a flexible spray tip and a way to draw paint right from a can. A Wagner Power Painter. It's the right tool for painting.
Tomorrow, golf's power players may have an advantage as they play the longest course on the PGA Tour, the Memphis Classic, tomorrow on CBS Sports.
This